Hey, so I'm at work. This is why the format's a bit different, and probably the sound isn't as good. Um, I just want to talk about a relationship that I've been getting into. So I don't like to put my personal life out there too much, and this is going to maybe stray from that a little bit. But I've gone through a divorce quite recently, and I started dating someone. And this is going to be a little bit about some of the things I've noticed from this type of relationship. And this is the type of relationship where basically you just switch the J and the P on your type, and then you get what's called Anima Animus. Um, it's a very special kind of relationship, um, and I'll explain why. So for me, my Anima Animus type is ISTJ. And I just want to talk about the kind of ups and downs that I've been having in this type of relationship. And I don't want to expose, I also spoke about this with Megan Lavoda a little bit about this issue. And I don't want to say too much about what she shared with me in private, but she said pretty much it sounds very similar to the times where she was in relationships with ENFPs, which is the same type of relationship type. So I'm going to maybe shed a little bit of insight onto what my relationship is, so that maybe other people can sort of see how their dynamic is working better. And this is just what I figured out so far. So first, I want to start with the good. Now we know that there's balance everywhere. Where there's good, there's bad. It's just two sides of the coin. And so the very incredible and beautiful, amazing, like no bad in this area of a relationship is with our tertiary functions. Um, and I want to start there because it's actually quite beautiful. So um, my tertiary function is Ni and hers is Fi. And that's actually my eighth function is her tertiary function, and her eighth function is my tertiary function. So it's going to be the function where we know there's a void. We're completely aware that that function exists in other people. We're completely aware that it exists, but we have no idea of how to access it or use it, right? So we do have the appreciation for it in the other person. We are able to see it. We are able to sort of to so here it's basically the tertiary function in anyone. It's going to be their like maybe my fourth function, my Fe, is going to be something where I'm going to have maybe one huge, great, lifelong ambition for, right? But my tertiary function, I'm going to make several small achievements in it throughout my life, and they're going to be achievements that I've had to work for and fight for and refine to get those achievements, and they're going to be things that might be obvious to someone else, but for me, they're going to be big achievements and big. It's going to be work. It's going to be things that I've struggled to do for. And because it's her eighth function, she's going to be able to see it clearly and appreciate it for what it is. And so I find that I'm able to see true beauty in her, and she's able to see true beauty in me because of the way this dynamic works. So because I have to work for it and because I have to struggle for it, it's nice to be appreciated for it, right? And she's built in a way where she can appreciate it. So I'll talk from my side. So her Fi is tertiary, and so there's a lot of beauty in her identity. It's one of the most beautiful. It is the most beautiful thing about her is her identity, and I'm able to appreciate it and see it in a way that few others maybe could, because it's my eighth function. And so like for me, Fi in a primary function is really burly. It's big. It's large. It's a bully. Okay, and for me, it's kind of like, that's a little. It's not. There's no beauty there for me. Okay, when it's someone's fourth function, it's sad, right? TE users for me, when I see their FI, for me it's like it's very sad. It's very weak, and I feel really bad for them in with their FI, that they have to deal and struggle with it. It's like it really hurts. Now, when it's their second function, there's still an element of beauty in it. For me, it feels like a major chord, right? Where there's like, it's a beautiful chord, but it's not a struggle. Like, there's no delicacy in it, right? And so a metaphor that I can think of is like a statue, for example. So like, someone built and created this statue throughout their life in their second function, and it's quite a beautiful function, but it doesn't have that delicacy that maybe the minor chord has. That that weakness from like the mix of the fourth function with the second function, or the fourth functions with the first function, where it's like there's this vulnerability there. So for me, her FI is like this vulnerable, beautiful flower that she's been, growing and trying to grow, but it's very vulnerable. It can be destroyed. And for me, that's where the beauty lies. And so the fact that I'm able to find beauty in it and find appreciation in her identity, which is something she's struggling and working to build, is it's a very good dynamic. And the same thing goes for her when I'm refining my concepts and my ideas to my NI, and I'm finally working and I'm getting these ideas. There's a delicacy there, and so she's able to appreciate all of my art, my music, my older YouTube videos, which nobody ever watches, but she watched them and she's like, they're amazing and they're incredible. She's able to appreciate them for what they are, because she sees that she doesn't have that function. She doesn't use it, but she sees that I can use it, and I'm using it in such a specialized way, in such a nuanced way that makes it beautiful. So this for us is just a really big high. It's something that all Anima Animus types should find in their tertiary and eighth function matches. So then let's get into the good and the bad. So our other functions, the SI, the TE, the TI, and the SE, these ST functions, there's conflict there. It's manageable conflict, and there's also beauty there as well, right? It's both. It's not all in on incredible. Like, her identity is for me, like her, and what she's actually working for, and she's proud of it, and it's nice that someone can appreciate it. And how my NI is for me, where it's like, it's vulnerable and she can appreciate it, and she won't add to it, but she can appreciate it from a distance, like a work of beauty, right? So these functions are really, really amazing. They're amazing. They're good, and they're really and they're annoying at the same time. So I could talk about the TI and the TE, for example. So we are problem-solving machines together. When we're working together externally, we can just take apart any problem that we see. Like, she'll solve things in the TE very easily, and I'll break down the problem in a way where I can also bring and contribute to this solution. So there's a great synergy there. When we conflict with each other, that's where the problem lies. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our specific problem, and maybe others can find parallels with their Anima Animus type. So for us, it's when we're arguing. And she's got masculine TE, I have masculine TI, so it's a big point of conflict. So when we're arguing, I'll tell you, I can't really say from her perspective, but I can only imagine. She'll bring in an argument, right? And I, as a TI user, will automatically want to deconstruct this argument until its simplest axioms and simplest form, and see where the argument might be flawed, build it back up, and see how the argument is right or wrong, right? And for a TE user, for me to go and do that, it's like, it's not what they do when they argue. They don't want to deconstruct the argument. They want to bring more arguments in that are against it or for it or things like this. And I'm just talking generally. I know this obviously isn't always true. But when I start deconstructing her argument, it sort of annoys her, because that's not how you argue. That's not how you think. And what annoys me is when she does this, how she thinks is she'll bring in another argument. And for me, it's like, hey, wait a minute, how is this other argument relevant in any way to the argument you just brought. Let's deconstruct it and figure out what's going on inside this argument. But she's like, no, that's not how you argue. You bring in this other argument to reinforce this argument, and then you bring in an argument to defeat it. And like that's how you do it. You bring in these arguments so the arguments can have an external, like this extroverted battle, this objective. And for me, it's like, whoa, what are you bringing in this argument for? I'm going to deconstruct and say why you can't bring in this argument, and for me, it feels like I'm not being listened to, because when I'm trying to deconstruct, it feels like to her it's irrelevant, right? So she's like, I'm not going to listen to this guy deconstructing my arguments. I'm just going to bring in more arguments and more arguments. And for me, it's like, hey, you're ignoring me. You're bringing in additional arguments when we have to deal with the problem at hand. And I'm trying to stop. I'm trying to put a stop to her bringing in more arguments. I'm trying to say stop, right? And so when I deconstruct the second argument, I'm like, hey, you can't bring in this argument because of this. And then she'll bring in another argument. Hey, wait, I can bring it in because of this. And I'm like, oh, crap. Let's go deconstruct why you can't do that, why these arguments. And then she'll bring in another one to reinforce that argument. And it's just like this never-ending loop of argumentation where we never actually get anywhere. But when we're together, arguing against something or for something, or we can solve some pretty amazing problems. So there's a good and a bad side there, and yeah, there's much more, but I'm not going to get too far into it. That's just generally. The SISE is also incredible. It's there's good and there's bad to it. So the good to it is just it's personal, but it's really good. Like, yeah. Sensory combination. We cook together. We go through sensory experiences together, and there's just a really nice interface there where she provides me the subjective view of the senses and I provide her the objective view of the senses. But there's also a conflict there, right? There's both. There's the dichotomy. So one of the things is I am SE, so I'm really hyper aware of all times, always looking at my surroundings, and for her, that's weird. Like, why are you constantly present, constantly glancing and looking around? If someone's talking, why do you have to look at them? Why do you have to know who they are? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, just ignore them. But for me, I don't even know if it's SE. It might just be like from my time in the military and stuff, where I have some form of PTSD, where I'm constantly aware and scanning my surroundings. But there's a source of conflict there, where it's like a misunderstanding, and also for her, when we're just talking, like a conversation together is great because she's talking sensory and I'm gathering sensory, and so it's the one way. It's more of a one-way conversation, to be honest, where I'm getting all of her blast into my consume, and it's actually quite nice, right? But then a little conflict comes in where like I miss something, like there's something that wasn't quite explained, right? And so I'll go and ask a question about it, and that'll interrupt her flow. It'll cause a little bit of a conflict, and not only that, when I ask that question, she won't give me that little piece of information that I'm missing, right? I'm going to be missing this one little SE data point, and she'll be like, okay, well, that's a whole story. I'm going to tell you the whole story. I'm like, no, don't tell me the whole story. Just tell me that one part that I'm missing. And no, conflict. Like, she's got to say the whole thing. She'll go through the whole thing, and then I'll be like, okay, there we go. Now I get it. Let's move on. No, we don't move on yet. We got to finish the story, right? So it's like there's a little bit of conflict there. But I mean, it's just patience, and I don't mind. I don't mind her. Like, it's nice. I like listening to it, and it's a tangent story. It's this, it's something that I like. I probably have heard 100 times, but it's still nice hearing it. So, I mean, there's a negative side there. It's just it's balanced on good and bad. So there's no problem there. Where our main problems are, and this is where I'm going to talk now, is with our polar versus our demon, our inferior functions. So this is just where all of the hell is. So like, I've never had such amazing highs with anyone, but I've also never had such horrible, decrepit lows with anyone. And this is just like this roller coasters of up and down. And when you're up, it's like, oh crap, when is the down is coming? Like, you can just feel it. It's going to come. right? And so these lows is just, it's just crazy how this dynamic works, and how type sort of predicts it and explains it in a perfect and genius way. So my inferior function is FE, and that's her polar function. So for me, that's where my personal growth is going to be. That's where my pain is going to come from, and that's where all of my struggles in life are going to be. Is going to be in that FE. And for her, it's going to be a polar function. It's going to be something that she doesn't even need to pay attention to. It's going to be a redundant function, like an appendix, because all of her other functions are working together and compensating for that in a way. Like the fact that she's this type of person means she doesn't have to worry about that. That means it doesn't mean anything. It's ridiculous to even worry about it, right? And so for me, anytime I struggle and want to go to personal growth, and it's vice versa. Anytime I want to get to personal growth, it's like, what the hell are you doing? Wait, like, this is just stupid. This is like the worst. This is the worst. Like, why are you spending your time here, right? And she doesn't get it that for me, as to be a complete person and to grow, I need to put my energy there, right? And for her, it comes off as me being fake, or as me kissing butt, sucking up to people. This is how it looks like to her, where it's not. This is not what it is, but it's like, it's the way it appears, right? And then for me, my polar function is NE, right? So for me, I don't need NE to function. Like I'm doing great with all of my functions, and NE is just something that I'm not really even conscious of, right? I don't even know it exists unless I'm really paying attention to it, right? And for her, NE is her demon. It's where all of her pain is going to come from, and it's where all of her life struggle is to get there. And so, like, one of the things that really pisses her off is that when she comes to some kind of conclusion and she tells me about it, I'm like, it could be, or it's possible, or something like that. Like, maybe, right? And for her, it's like, what? That hurts, because it's like, because it feels like I'm dismissing her demon. It feels like I don't even care about it. Whereas for me, it's like, I'm not going to put all of my eggs in a possibility. I'm not going to like focus on these possibilities. It doesn't matter to me. Yeah. So I'm going to be hurting her personal growth, because she needs somebody to help her develop this area of seeing possibilities and being at peace with them. And I'm just going to push her back into her saviors by dismissing them and not caring about her main demon, her inferior function, right? And so how does there's this dynamic that comes to play really regularly. And so just as a background, I have barely been on Facebook or on the internet at all for the last, I think, almost week and a half now, where, for me, it's feels really irresponsible to do that. Because of that FE, it feels like I'm not taking responsibility for my demons. It feels like I'm being bad, quote unquote, by doing this. But for her, it's protecting her demon. It's protecting her NE, because, like, if I like somebody's post, for example, she doesn't know what it means, and she's gonna be like, well, what does it mean that he liked this post, right? And it's all made up. It's all fiction. It's not real, right? Especially for me, I'm able to see that it's not real because it's my polar function. But for her, to her it seems real. Like, why did he like this person's thing? What does it mean? Is he going to cheat on me? Is he interested in that person? Does he think something? Does he think it's funny? It's not funny. Does it, like, what? All these possibilities are racing in her head, and it doesn't add up, right? And she's expressed to me so many times, it's the new person. It's the new person that comes on, and if I like something they said, what does it mean? Does it mean I have a relationship with this person? Does it mean this person's going to be in our life? Like, what does that mean to her? Like, it's really stressful, and I get it, right? And I don't want to add all of this extra stress on her, and I'm trying my best. Like, even though I'm trying my best to pay attention and know any exists, even though for me naturally it's not something that's real, right? It's fake. And at the same time, it's I forgot my train of thought. but yeah, for me, I don't know the NE exists, so I'm not paying attention to it. I'm not paying attention to when it attacks her and when it causes her pain. And accidentally, it's like completely accidentally, it's unintentionally that I cause her pain in the NE because I'm just not aware that it's an issue, right? I'm not paying attention to the negative possibilities that she's going to be receiving, and the fear it's going to cause her, and all that kind of stuff. And so it's really somewhere that I'm trying to struggle with. At the same time, for me, it feels like for my functions, the way my functions work, if I were to get into that demon state where I don't know what something means or all that kind of stuff, it means that I'm not trusting the person. So for me, it's solved just by trust. It's like, okay, well, you don't trust me. That's why you're worried about what it means when I give a like somewhere, right? You don't trust me. That's why you're worried, or you don't trust this other person, or this NE is coming at you because of a lack of trust. Like that's how it sees. And if you just either trust the person or just not trust them, like they're gonna screw you over, so don't trust them, and then all of this stuff is going to be negative and you can already assume it, right? But I'm not doing it intentionally. Like I hope that I'm trustworthy, but at the same time, the fact that I'm using FE all the time makes it seem like I'm not trustworthy, because FE to her seems fake. She said it's fake. It's not being real to yourself. Which is coming also from her FI, where feelings on extroverted, like feelings are introverted. What are you doing putting them out with the tribe? And that's adding to her jealousy and her difficulty dealing with these possibilities, because why is he putting feelings with this new person? Why is he doing that? Feelings are personal. Why is he feeling with someone else? That's wrong. That's bad, right? In her opinion, because her FE is polar. She doesn't see the usefulness of it. For me, it's it's a tool. It's and it's not being fake. It's being real to who I really am. Getting in touch with my inferior side. It's finally finding it's growth, right? And so it's hurting my growth doing that by saying that I'm, attacking me and my demons whenever I use them, and I'm like, I need. In order for me to get better at my demons, and same thing for her. In order for her to get better at her demons, we need someone to say, hey, good job, you didn't do that great, but good job, at least you're trying, right? And it's the opposite. It's like, don't do it, it's bad, right? And it's forcing me to go back into my saviors, right? And so the most recent argument that we had is that I personally feel I told her it's a responsibility. Like, people are messaging me, they're leaving comments on my posts. Why am I leaving the post in the first place? That's a question. But I'm responsible to reply to them. I have to go, like, even from a consume perspective, I'm responsible to see what they wrote and, give a like. If it contributes to the conversation, I'll give a like. If it adds a point that's interesting, I'll give a like. Even if I disagree with it, I'll give a like. I'll be like, hey, thank you for contributing, right? And that's fake to her, right? There's many other reasons why I'll give a like. And then I used to be a little bit more, I called it a love whore. I'll give the love hearts way too often. I stopped that. I started giving more likes and less loves because of this sort of thing. But yeah, so it's a struggle. And so right now, by not being on Facebook and not being on YouTube and not interacting with people, it feels like I'm being a child. It feels like I'm getting rid of these responsibilities that I've taken onto myself. And I just want to apologize for that to everybody, but yeah, so I no matter how much I try to explain it, it's not coming across. And it's like, it's a real stopping block, because I need to grow as a person, and she needs to grow as a person, and I don't want to hold her back. And I know deep down she doesn't want to hold me back. And so that's sort of where we are at the moment. So yeah, I wanted to bring this in as like a dynamic, and I know everybody has this type of person. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is mediation, right? So like mediation, you want to find someone who can balance your functions with each other if you're having any kind of conflict, right? So like, let's take my type, ISTP, and then there's an ISTJ, right? So there's FE Dom and a TI Dom. Who are you going to take to mediate? Well, any NI Dom will be able to mediate between FE and TI. Even if they're using TE and FI, they can still mediate between us, right? They can still mediate between the thinking and the feeling, and between the tribe and the self, which is the two parts, right? They can mediate between the two. They can figure it out, right? Or an SE Dom could do the same thing, no problem, right? So that's how you would get that kind of mediation, right? Or even, and I guess even an SI Dom, it would just be the communication would be harder to get to us, or an NE Dom, the communication would be harder to get to us. But I mean, it's just a great tool for mediation, right? So between our two types, the mediation is very difficult, and I think for our particular problem at the moment, the best mediator would be someone like an FE-NE or NE-FE, which is where my polar and her demon and her polar and my demon occupy together. So if I were to go and seek mediation for this, I would make a video maybe and be like, hey, are there any FE-NEs out there or any FEs out there that would be willing to mediate for us? But I mean, there's also other options, like, the opposite of that, a TI-SI might be able to mediate, because those are our two primary functions, and they would be able to see their demons are our demons. And so that could also give another perspective and add to working this out. And then also so that's from the alpha quadra. So from the gamma quadra, then also we could go to an NF. So NF is NIFI or FINI, so that would help us in a different way, because that's our tertiary functions. So actually, you know what, that might not help us. Scratch that. But the opposite of them, the TESE, also wouldn't really help. Yeah, so it's basically only the alpha quadra they could probably mediate better for us in that way. So it's someone who shares our polar functions or shares our savior functions, right? So shares our inferior functions or shares our dominant functions, right? So those are the two kinds of people. And in traditional MBTI, those people don't exist, but in the 32 type system, they do. So that's sort of where I'm at right now with this relationship. And like I said, the highs are amazing and it's worth trying to salvage. It's just the lows are just so entangled and complicated, that because of the fact that it involves polar and demon functions. And, especially during the fact that she doesn't really believe too much in typology. So any typology explanation I can bring to the table to sort of explain it and try to solve it is not actually a valid tool. It's not something that will help us. So I have to explain it in a way that is not related to typology. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the problems. And I've glossed over a lot. I'm just speaking really generally. And I think that this type of relationship, Anima Animus, can be, the most beautiful, the most amazing relationship you'll ever have. And at the same time, you'll have some pretty difficult struggles. So if you can get over those struggles and solve them, and work at them and put in and be responsible for them and put in the energy required to solve them, then there's a payoff. Like, there's always a payoff, right? It's just karma. It's just any energy you put in, you're going to get out in benefit, right? No matter what, because there's a balance there, and you can see it that our tertiary functions are just incredible with each other. It's all good, and that's why our demon functions have to be all bad, because of that beautiful tertiary. And really, I find that my beauty comes from my tertiary, and her beauty comes from her tertiary, and she's able to fully appreciate it, and I'm able to fully appreciate it, which is incredible in a relationship. So, yeah, that's it. Have a good one, guys.